Hey friends, how's it going? So this is David Potts with Song Notes, and I want to answer a quick listener question in today's video. So this is coming in from Gary over on my Patreon page. Gary, thank you so much for the support. And Gary's asking about walkdowns and strumming, how we might mix those two together. And I will answer Gary's question. I also made this 2-pager PDF. It's going to be a sort of the answer to Gary's question in tab form. And I'm going to show about 3 other riffs that take the same principle, the same technique, and show it in different contexts. And on page 2, I'll actually link out to a bunch of my other lessons. Some are for songs that I have song sheet music available, and some of them are for instructional lessons that I have my Patreon PDFs available. So this 2-pager is available with this lesson, but let's get into this email and look at what we're dealing with here. So Gary asks about my take on Bob Seger's song, Still the Same. Now, I don't know this song, but I love how Gary gives detail to sort of give me a reason to sort of understand what he's asking. So it's a great beginner song, lots of chords, including the dreaded F chord, a nice progression, but it's the strumming patterns that confuse me, especially in the chorus with the lyric, and you're still the same, and the walk down that happens in the gap between the G and the C. So he's asking for help, and I appreciate your compliments here, Gary, and I'll have to give you my answer here. So I love this detail. I don't know this song, but this gives me a specific thing where I'm able to help just by listening. And that's what I did in this case, and I immediately sort of realized that, oh, this is something I've learned before, even though I've never learned this song before, because the way guitar works is a lot of these principles you can sort of apply in lots of different songs. So let's check this out. Gary says, we're going from a G down to a C. So what that suggests to me is that we're in the key of C. And when we're in the key of C, we have our F and our G as our major chords, right? And lots of times, from your 5 chord, which is a G when you're in the key of C, that's going to be the chord that resolves back to the main chord, the tonic, the C in this case, right? So there's a walk down that happens. So let's listen to what Bob Seger's doing. Here's a live clip of him playing it. I'll just play this quick portion.
You just turn your back and walk.
So what's happening there is Bob Seger is staying on the G chord for 2 measures, but while he's on that, the bass notes are sort of descending down to the C. So listen to it one more time just for context.
You just turn your back and walk.
And after listening to this, I immediately was reminded of the Cat Stevens song Wild World, which is a song I learned a long time ago. I recently did a lesson for it, updated my sheet music for it, but there is this very distinctive fill that happens just before the chorus starts, right? We're in a D minor, then we go to an E major, then a G. And there's this very pregnant with anticipation and tension G that resolves down to the C for, oh baby, baby, it's a wild world, right? But on that G, what Cat Stevens is playing is, and if you take that, you take the arpeggiation out of it, this bass note is what's changing. And it's going from an F note to an E note to a D note, and then it resolves to the C, okay? So basically going down the steps in the key of C. And that's exactly, it turns out, what Bob Seger is doing here. So let's look at this first riff I put together in tab form to show you basically how you could play Bob Seger's version by yourself. So we're starting on a G, and we want to get to a C. What we want to do in the meantime is while we're strumming the G, we're going to sort of accentuate these bass notes on the 3rd and 4th string. So the first bass note is going to be the open 3rd string, okay? Then 3rd fret of the 4th string, 2nd fret of the 4th string, and then open 4th string, okay? So those highlighted notes, get used to just those first. And you resolve to that C bass note to play the C. But what's happening is we're going to keep our left pinky up here in the 3rd fret, and while we play that open 3rd string, or not while we play it, but after we play it, you can sort of do some strums of the thinnest 3 strings. Then you do the F note on the 3rd fret of the 4th string, then this E note, then the open 4th string is a D note, and then you go to that C bass note and strum. So there's lots of ways you could strum this with your rhythm. You could take this approach, right? I'm sort of doing a bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass. Then you repeat the pattern, right? Or you could do it in 3/4 time, right? You could do it finger style. Right? This is sort of the waltz feel. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Whether you're using a pick or not, no big deal. that's basically the principle there. And again, you could just sort of practice these without any strumming, just get used to that. And a general idea that's going on here is we're strumming just part of the G chord. We're not doing all 6 strings when we do those strums. We're sort of favoring the thinner strings, and it lets that bass note sort of shine through as the lowest in pitch thing you hear, right? Okay, so that's the first thing I want to show you that effectively answers the question that Gary asked. But let me show you this same thing in different contexts to help you flesh out the picture. Figure 2 here takes the same chord shapes, and this is similar to what you hear in Cat Stevens' Wild World, is you're coming from this G, and we're going to get to this C. But here what we're going to do is do these sort of one note at a time. Okay, I sort of fumbled that. Let me do it again. Okay, very similar to the figure 1 we just looked at. Basically, the first bass note we're starting with is this F, then the E, then the D, and then we go to the C. And after we play those bass notes, those thinnest 3 strings are staying the same every time, right? Right? These notes are always the same. So that's kind of our G chord. It's these bass notes that are telling the story, whether you strum it like that or you do the Cat Stevens approach and you go to the C. Now a quick general bit of advice here about the way this is written up. This might just help you. Whenever you see a slash chord like this, it effectively means the bass note. What's after the slash is sort of the bass note we're playing. What's before the slash is the chord. So this is a G sort of with an F bass note, or a G with an E bass note, or a G with a D bass note, and then we go to a regular C. And if there's no slash, the assumption, what's implied, is that the bass note of the chord is the same note that the chord is named after. So a C chord has a C bass note. You know, if you just see a C. Same for G. This is a G, that's a G bass note, right? So that's what the slash chords mean. But let's look at other ways to do this, because I really want to sort of set the tone here for other ways you can use this same approach. One of them is to use this version, which is going to use the same bass notes that are going down in pitch, but we're actually going to switch chords. We're not just going to stay on a G the whole time. So we might start on a G and end up in a C, but here we're going to go from a G to an F to a C to a G, and then back to a C. Now that's kind of a lot of chord switching, right? But how can we make those bass notes stand out? Effectively, we can just look at the tab here and play those highlighted circled notes sort of between the strums. Okay, same bass notes I played before, but let's also look at the fact that we're not strumming all the strings every time we play any of the chords. We're going to sort of pick those maybe 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. This is sort of our sweet spot, right here, okay? No matter what chord we're playing. So for the G, whoop, F, C, G over D, and then to the C. Let me do it again, okay? G. Let me slow it down here, make sure it's clear. G bass note, then we're going to get into this F position, okay? Middle 4 strings. But we're going to play the 4th string, 3rd fret is our bass note. Then we're going to go to a C chord, but for the C chord, our bass note, it's not going to be on the 5th string, it's going to be on the 4th string. But we're still going to do our full C position with our left hand. But this note, this 4th string note, this is an E, is going to be our bass note. Then we go to our G chord, but with the G, we want the D to be our bass note. Then to the C. Okay, so from the top, let's do G, F, C. These are the chords I'm playing. Back to the G, and then back to the C. Okay, but if we do bass notes, we're gonna have our G bass note, F bass note, E bass note, D bass note, and then we go to the C. Okay, so that's one you could do there. And the cool part about this is the main idea I want you to take away is that these bass notes are in lots of chords in the key of C. So I actually have another lesson that I link out on page 2 is my key of C cheat sheet. It shows you all the chords in the key of C, what the notes are that make up those chords, and you can see from looking at that a lot of those chords are going to use these notes. That's basically what lets us use different chords. Like we're picking chords off the shelf in the key of C pantry, putting them together, and as long as we just play with this sort of bass note style, you get the same effect. So in figure 4, what I've done is put together a little exercise, a little sort of, I guess, 4-measure thing. So it's going to sound like this. Let me do it one more time. And basically what this is doing is it's combining both these things together, right? We have our sort of F to the C to the G, then C to the G to the F in the first line. But in the second line, we're going to use that sort of first approach that matches sort of what Bob Seger does. But with what we show in the second line, look how we're mixing it up here. We're going to go from F to E to D, then we're going to go below C down to B, and then we're going to go back up to C to end things for our tonic, right? So the first line, F, C over E, G over D. Then we go back to C with our E bass note, G with a D bass note, and down to F with a C bass note. So the first line again. And then we go to our second line. And in our second line, it sounds good to sort of omit that thinnest string if you can. And with that G over B, I'm sort of doing a hammer on there. It just sounds good, I think. But basically, one more time from the top, it's... So I hope that was helpful for you, just to give you an example exercise that sort of uses these techniques together. Again, whether we're going from different chords, like C, F, and G, and we're sort of picking out bass notes, or if we go to this G voicing, where we sort of keep our pinky still, but it's the 4th string which does the bass note. But again, this is the same concept whether you use it in either of these manners. So get this PDF on my Patreon page, and also, again, on page 2, I link out to songs like Wild World by Cat Stevens, Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel, or I've Just Seen a Face by the Beatles, all of which kind of use this while you're strumming, doing these bass note transitions to create the walk-up effects. And again, I also have the sort of instructional lessons that are available to all my Patreon folks just with your membership, right? I have the key of C cheat sheet. I have a beautiful sort of finger-style exercise that's a walk down in the key of C. And I also have just one on walk-ups and walk-downs and the fretboard explained, talking about what is going on with that general principle in overall. So again, Gary, I hope this is helpful for you. Thanks very much for writing in. I love the detail in that question. And all of you else, send in your questions. I can't get to all of them or even most of them, but again, it's great to know what you're looking for help with. And this specificity that Gary did with his question was great because it let me approach this song. I didn't know the song at all, but I could pick out exactly what he's asking about and help him hopefully with this lesson. So thank you all very much for the support. It's tremendously appreciated. Hope you find this helpful. Find everything you need over at my website, playsongnotes.com. You can browse all my lessons, search all my lessons, and it will link you out to either music notes for the sheet music or Patreon, which has these instructional PDFs. So thanks a lot again, and I'll see y'all. Have a great one wherever you are, and until next time. Bye-bye, my friends.